Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and 2AT Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the last summer edition. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. With me is my partner in crime, my partner in murder, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. What do you got for us, Tom?
I just tried to stab you with a knife, Carla. I don't really feel like dancing. A terrible line.
Dialogue.
And this says it all about this movie, comes seconds after probably the best line in the movie. Almost as if they just couldn't leave what's good about this movie alone.
Right.
When Brandy, aka Moesha, emerges from the closet to say, "I just wanted your black skirt, but I'm not ready to die for it."
That's right. Yeah, totally.
And some screenwriters like, as good as that is, it's not enough. We need something that just
I just gotta add a little something to
that
it.
undoes what's good about that line. Almost exactly.
Let's unwrap that gift and throw a big piece of shit on it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We are today talking about the 1998 movie I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, directed by Danny Cannon. This is a sequel to the 1997 film I Know What You Did Last Summer. So this movie came out 1 year later. They were ready to go, Tom.
Yeah, and I noticed that, and they're a movie that wants to kind of keep the timeline of the fictional universe in sync with the release schedules of the movie, at least at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very noticeable, not least because they tell us that this is 1 year since
Right.
The murders happen, probably twice in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, they make it clear, we're back to the summer.
I did think that, without having any specific examples to go on, that this is quite common in horror movies, that they have this 1 year gap. Maybe this is what Kevin Williamson was riffing on.
Maybe.
Was that there is this 1 year gap, and it's typically to make sure that, you're not, when you make your sequel, you're not making it in the future, so it doesn't become science fiction until you want it to become science fiction, when you're completely out of options.
Right, when you have to.
Yes.
See Jason X.
Right. So I feel like this is a pretty common. That's an amazing turnaround. We have to wait 6 years for a Bond film now.
Right. And the amazing, also when you base your titles off of a season, so it's going to have to take place every year.
Yeah, and that's something
they're saying, you know what I mean?
We get a lot of kind of arbitrary additions to the mythology in the third movie, and one of those is that the fisherman only strikes on July 4th.
Yeah, right.
And I think he's just a
and to
general
be clear,
summer killer.
To be clear, he does strike on the 4th of July or 4th of July weekend in the first two movies.
Okay.
But it's the same guy attacking the same people. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, when you were told horror stories when you were a kid, it was, this person could attack you at any time. The guy with the hook, and it's scraping on the roof or that kind of shit. And in this movie, well, we're not even too...
Well, you just don't go out that day. It's like The Purge.
Yeah, right.
Just fucking stay in.
Just stay home and have yourself a cocktail and a hot dog, for fuck's sake. Lock the doors.
Yeah, and don't send your parents away, which is apparently what everyone in horror films does.
They're always gone.
They look like. Don't you think that the parents in these kinds of horror movies look like real assholes? They're always abandoning their children on major holidays.
And look, this is a podcast about sequels, but I do want to just take a moment to speak to the original movie, which, this movie was a hit. I mean, the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, they spent $17 million on it and made $72 million just in the USA, 125 worldwide. So you knew a sequel was coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking to your point about the parents, they're kind of always gone, and you have all this young talent in that movie, but they're not good in that movie.
Moesha's got some moves, but everyone else is terrible.
Well, I'm speaking to the original movie. Like Ryan Philippe,
I have
he's
not
a
seen
talented
it. I should get that out now. I
Okay.
haven't seen it. I'm not trying to be a purist. I just haven't seen it.
I marvel at the lack of good acting in that original movie. And I think you're right. I think this particular sequel, there's better acting in it, but this movie, I've got two different statistics here. I have one that says that this movie had a budget of $65 million, which makes me think, what did you spend it on? What, $65 million?
That was one weekend in in Mexico, not the Bahamas.
Right. But I have another note that says it's reported that this budget was $65 million, but that's not really true. It was $24 million.
Okay.
I don't know, but the movie made $40 million, and it really underperformed. People didn't like it. It didn't even get a worldwide gross. It stayed at $40 million. Like they said, no, thank you. We're not gonna push it out.
Wow. I mean, it's like you said, it was inevitable, and also I think because of the kind of movie it is, it's inevitable as well. Slasher movies, which loosely this movie belongs to. And you're already wincing.
Sorta.
It is.
I know.
Let's face it.
But it's like the clunkiest version of that movie.
Let's call it a hooker. Because it's not really slashing, they're hooking.
It's not a hooker movie. I mean, it's not a slasher movie. It's more of a hooker movie.
Which is a apt
not a
description,
prostitute.
however you take that.
Yeah, not a prostitute.
But built into that model is that the slasher movie ends with a final girl who survives. And then so it's pretty easy to know where to go on from there. You just make the next movie about the final girl. And you've got a built-in character arc because she's traumatized. And everyone's telling her that this can't happen again. And then it happens again. So there's your movie, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where they're trying to put this film, essentially.
100%, yeah. I mean, the way that they built this movie, I was like, yeah. I mean, that's what you do. That's where you go in these.
It's
things.
where it's supposed to go. But I do want to talk first off because, well, first of all, you have this ridiculous dream. This movie starts with a dream sequence.
I really like this.
Her being religious is not at all a part of the first movie.
But it's got nothing to do with that. Confession booth is just a perfect expositional device.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got a dream sequence with a confession booth. They just want to get out all the exposition in the first scene.
But of course, I'm sitting there. It bothers me because I'm thinking to myself, why would this woman dream about being in a confessional?
Yes.
This is only to serve the script. The character would not be dreaming this. This is bullshit. So I find that upsetting. You don't know this, but the first movie actually ends with Jennifer Love Hewitt in a steamy shower.
Right.
She gets a phone call.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it ends exactly like you'd think it would. Towel wrapped around her body. She gets a phone call, so it's clear that she and Freddie Prinze Jr. are back together again. She walks back into the shower room. She's like at college. An inordinate amount of steam, and then the killer jumps through a glass door to murder her. which this movie handles in the first 2 minutes by saying, when she's got the new friend who's a boy,
Right.
who says, "Oh, was it the shower dream again?"
Uh-huh.
And she goes, "No, it was the confessional dream." So she's just chock full of reoccurring dreams. She's, like you said, she's being triggered. She has PTSD. But what I want to talk about is Freddie Prinze Jr. comes down for the 4th of July weekend, and he wants her to come home with her to the town where she was almost murdered. And she just sort of says, "I'm not ready to do that." And he kind of says the boyfriend thing of, "Hey, I understand that." But then he plays the manipulation card of, "I guess you just don't need to see me either."
Yeah, and he's about to and just to add to that, he's about to propose to her.
Right.
And if he's not, I don't think he's ready for marriage if he's not willing to accept that a year after all her friends were murdered and she was nearly murdered, that she
still has problems. Yeah.
And you get to the point where she has to try and verbalize this. And so she says, a small part of me hasn't healed up yet. And I'm like, yeah, a single year is a very short amount of time to recover from a major event. But again, this is where the genre is pushing on the film, because horror movies, you just have to accept that they don't give you that time to recover. They expect the characters in it to get over it, and that's the conflict.
Correct.
And so that's a genre thing, but it makes
that's the inherent problem with the genre.
But in putting it in Freddie Prinze Jr.'s, who is the kind of the savior of this movie in many respects. He's the Deus Ex Machina of this movie. It makes him look like a douche from the outset, which really kind of hurts his characterization going forward.
Tom, he is a douche. This is the problem. Like we spoke in our introductory episode about the kind of politics of this movie. My problem with this movie is this shows how Hollywood regards men versus women. It's, the focus is not on her where it should be. It's on him with, "I guess you don't really like me." And he's making her feel guilty about feelings that she should be feeling. And that really bugs me.
100%.
It's just shitty.
Yeah, well, as we kind of anticipated in in our little mini-sode about this, we both have the same problem with this movie, but with we thought that we might have the same problem with this movie, but different examples, and that's exactly what has happened. Because
I knew it.
Because I feel exactly the same way you do, but my vehicle for this is the Mekhi Phifer character.
Okay, yeah.
Because
you're absolutely right.
This is later in the movie, but the way he treats Brandy when she tries to stand up to Ben Willis,
right,
is just appalling. She gets out a knife and it's like, "You're gonna cut vegetables? You're gonna butter it?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, she's just looking for a knife.
And
she's a kickboxer.
Yeah.
She has more physical skill than you do to beat up a man.
Well, and also his whole idea of their relationship being successful is whether or not he's currently having sex with her.
Yeah, I was so confused by...
He just, everything about him for more than half of this movie is, can't we just fuck? Everybody's interrupting us fucking.
And if the movie was making it clear that it thinks these guys are appalling, I would be okay with that. But
no.
The movie endorses their behavior, making Freddie Prinze Jr., the hero, the kind of cavalry of this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Mekhi Phifer as well. They have this whole scene where you show Brandy kickboxing. And I'm waiting for the moment where she,
uses it.
The shit out of Ben Willis.
Right.
But she still needs these two big strong men to come in and save her, and it's just bullshit.
It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Also, speaking back to the scene that I was speaking to earlier about the, Freddie Prinze Jr. as is it Ray? Right?
I don't care.
You're right. You're right.
I'm not even got IMDb up. It's Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah. So they have that fight, and then they call later, and he does say he's sorry, but she says, "No, I'm sorry. I'm the one who should be sorry." And I'm thinking, no, you shouldn't. You should not be the one who's sorry.
No.
He's being an asshole.
It's basically he gets away with toxic masculinity because
Right.
he's not the son of a serial murderer.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Well, that's it. That's basically that's how low the bar is on what we consider a good man in this movie.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're not active. You only kill people in self-defense. But another thing you mentioned was college.
Mm-hmm.
That they're at college, and I was unclear as to what kind of education these people were getting. So one of them mentioned summer school, which to me is the idea that they're all, if not learning disabled, then a little on the slow side. That's really scans for me in this movie.
Yes.
Because who answers a geography question by looking at a bag of coffee?
Right. And also, I mean, I'm so glad that it came back up later in the story as the worst reveal ever.
It's great. I was in my notes, I was bashing the movie. I'm like, really? It's 1998 and we're still doing radio station competition?
Well, yeah. So we're doing a radio station, but it comes into play, right? So it's a radio station competition. They ask them what the capital of Brazil is, and they say Rio de Janeiro and win. And in my head, I'm like, this is the worst radio competition ever. You're wrong. That's not the fucking capital.
Yeah.
But it comes back into play later.
In retrospect, she didn't even need to be that close to the mark.
Yeah, right.
Like, she could have said, like, coffee. And if like, you've won a
You've won! And that's the other thing. Why not just send something in the mail that says, you're a sweepstakes winner? Go to... Also, can we just talk for a moment?
Because maybe they can't read. I'm getting the vibe that they can't read. School is not rubbing off on these kids.
That's a clear possibility. But I want to talk about the idea of this movie essentially being a vacation murder story. I immediately imagined the killer of this movie in a travel agent shop. And like in the slicker, hook on, and okay, I see. So it's going to be $4,000 to get there, and the travel agent's like, yeah, $4,000. And what if I don't go first class? I wanted that scene of the killer trying to find his way to the Bahamas more than anything else in this movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I that would have all been an improvement. I'd rather see that than the unedited circumstances of how Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yes.
got to the Bahamas.
Yeah, no.
Not, I'm jumping ahead, but this is relevant. The movie is trying to basically. It's blowing the surprise that he will turn up at the end,
right,
and save them.
Yeah.
So that surprise is blown, because
it's never designed.
About the fact is, people will think, how did he get to the island in a storm?
Yeah. Which is why you don't make the choice in the first place to leave him behind. But that's just me talking. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just getting into I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Stay tuned, and we'll talk more about the failings of this glorious movie.
And some of the good stuff.
Okay. We'll be right back.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back. We're here talking about the 1998 film I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Tom, when we left, we were, joking about how this murderer might get to the Bahamas for this vacation set of murders.
Right.
The idea that they went to the Bahamas to me is the silliest thing in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes it just bad or it's pure genius.
Well, it's
in how bad it is.
It's certainly not just this movie. I mean, one of the things that sequels, one of the plays that sequels have to switch things up is to relocate the action of the original
right
to somewhere else. And doing it internationally is common. There's a whole, I mean, you probably won't know this, but there's a whole set of British sitcoms from the 70s, like Are You Being Served, Steptoe and Son. And when they made feature film versions of these movies, the standard device was they would go to Spain. So I mean, it's like, and you think about Babe Pig in the City, and the Crocodile Dundees, and it's like it's just a way of switching things up.
Sure.
But that typically adds nothing but a different backdrop.
Questions. Yeah.
But what is kind of remarkable is how efficient. I do like the efficiency of this movie. It's how they're able to terraform an island paradise like the Bahamas, which is actually Mexico, but it's doing the same job.
Right.
Into what is essentially a haunted house. So as soon as they start traveling there, you get like a seafaring type going, "This is the only way on and off the island."
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, storms are coming. It's going to be storms for days.
Well, I want to talk about that because, okay, look. Yes, hurricane season starts like June 1st and goes through, say, October or November. But the worst of it is August and September. So the idea that on the 4th of July weekend, everybody leaves the Bahamas and it becomes a desolate island is the most ridiculous thing that this movie posits. And it makes me want to punch this movie in the face, and yet I also kind of think it's genius in how stupid it is, You know that it's all about getting them as isolated as possible. Right.
So you have island, storm, the phone's down, the hotel's empty, there's a vicious dog. Literally, there's literally no more reason they could be more isolated.
Yeah. The phone's down is one of my favorite scenes in how stupid it is. It's amazing because the storm hasn't even started yet. It's not even raining at the time the phones go down. Jennifer Love Hewitt picks up the phone, and what's his name? What's that actor's name? Jeffrey Combs?
The hotel
the guy from The Reanimator.
Yeah,
the receptionist from The Reanimator and from Frighteners. She picks up the phone and he says, "They just went down a couple minutes ago."
Yeah,
As if that's the reason he came into the room.
they try
was
to
to give
put
that
an ironic
information.
button on that scene, which just about works,
Oh, man.
where
It's
she
funny.
does the thing that people do in horror movies, where someone says the phone's down and they still check the phone,
Yeah, right.
and he's like, "I just told you that the phones are down."
I just fucking
So
said.
I kind of liked how they sort of made reference to that as the like as a dumb thing that people do in horror movies, but it is trying to put like a kind of gloss on the fact that this is a dumb thing that the movie's doing.
Right, exactly. My other thing, did you notice, and this happens in all kind of horror movies, but it is so prominent in this particular sequel of when somebody senses there's danger behind them, they do the slowest possible turn
Mm-hmm.
to try and see what's behind them. That's not how we act. When you think something's behind you, you go, "Huh!"
Yeah. Well,
Like I just banged my closet door trying to simulate for you how quickly we actually turn around. And like, I just think it's hysterical that in all horror movies, but this one especially,
yeah.
everyone is,
well, and also just like it's sort of, it negates going somewhere different, like moving the story if you're going to do exactly the same thing you did when the person was at home. So
Yes!
Jennifer Love Hewitt like slowly walks around her apartment when she thinks someone's in there, and oh, it's Brandy.
uh-huh.
And then when she gets to the hotel room in the Bahamas, she does exactly the same thing. It's sort of like,
Right.
it's like, I don't know if they're trying to make some comment about how, when you go to a hotel, you do the things you do at home. I doubt it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's...
Well, but I have a note too that reminds me. I have a note here about what's the new boyfriend's name? I don't even know.
I
it
mean,
there.
yeah, Benson.
But yeah, Ben's
Ben's
son.
son, which, would be, if she figured out he was the serial killer's son because his surname is Benson,
Right.
she would be a genius. And we know for a fact she's not, because she looks at a bag of coffee when someone asks her a geography question.
That's fucking great. But there's this moment where I believe it's the moment where she has seen, not the maid, I think it's the kid from the docks who's like hung up in her closet. There's blood on the floor. She freaks out. Oh my God, it's happening again. It's happening again. By the way, everyone who's her friend knows this actually happened. She was stalked by a murderer a year ago. She's saying it's happening again, and they all go, "Oh, you're just freaking out. Don't even worry about it." But she goes back into her room alone, and Ben's son tries to do a sneak attack with flowers.
Uh-huh.
So when you...
Well, and to your point, they continue to question her sanity even after they found corpses in the hotel.
Yes!
It's like, what is it going to take you to convince you that there is something fucked up going on here? How many dead people do you have to see?
So, and the other thing that's funny about this movie and the movie that preceded it, the murderer... Okay. The original movie, these kids hit the guy, right?
Yeah.
They throw him into the water, but they think he's dead, but he survives. He comes back for revenge. He wants to kill all those kids that were involved in fucking his shit up.
Yeah.
But in both movies, and in this one especially, man, he's killing a lot of people that have nothing to do with these,
So
with anything that happened last summer.
well, but they at one point, Bill Cobbs, who I think we both love as an actor,
Yes.
throws out something about a murder that took place in the hotel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Was that committed by Ben Willis?
I think the movie is that what happened?
I don't know. That's the question I have for you. Because I have a note that sort of says, you know, my classic note for all these movies is this something that happened in the original?
That happened. Did
they
it really?
mention
Yeah,
this
right.
before? And it's just a different, you know, name. It's just a different
Yeah.
subject, but it's the same idea. So I didn't know whether they were trying to suggest, and you know, it's pretty important in terms of the characterization of the killer, because if he's not the murderer, if he hasn't committed murders before they threw him in the river and hit him with a car, then I'm on his side, totally, 100%. He has the moral authority in this film. But if he killed, like, his wife and kids a few years before, then it's kind of 50-50, it could go either way.
Yeah, I guess if I remember correctly in the original film,
He's not a good guy?
Yeah, it was like he was there to kill some. He had killed. I don't remember, but there was something with another family, whose I think brother or some. Fuck.
I mean, there's gotta be. Otherwise, this guy is 100% in the right. I mean,
I kind of like that.
You know, it's like, and this is probably like one of the reasons that it didn't. That it didn't evolve into a name, you know, a kind of name slasher, is that
right?
If you think about the Freddys and the Michael Myers, it's like either they're, you know, psychopaths, or whatever revenge plan they had, you know, they take it too far and they target the wrong people. As far as I'm concerned, this guy is, you know. I mean, he's killing the people.
But I think that's what I'm speaking to, is this idea that, like, you know, because yes, if like the kids did something bad in the first movie, they deserve it.
Yeah.
They, like you said, they deserve their comeuppance, but this guy's killing people that had nothing to do with it.
Well, yeah, but that presumably that's why they're bringing up.
But that's just a byproduct of a bad script that doesn't want the heroes to die for a long time. They want to keep those actors around.
I guess so, but you know, I
mean, look,
I still have to
even
agree
in this
with Ben
movie,
Willis.
look, even in this movie, there's four essential heroes, right? If you have Brandy,
right,
and her boyfriend, and so you've got Mekhi Phifer, and you've got Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jennifer Love Hewitt. How many of those people survive?
3.
3 of the 4.
I kind of like that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's because you know the as we said, the convention is that only one girl survives. And I like the idea of this gender and this racially one white girl. So I like this idea of the gender mixed trio.
Well, I will concede that if both Brandy and her boyfriend Mekhi Phifer got killed, that'd be super fucked up.
Okay, so you've given me the launch pad to talk about what really bothers me about this movie. Okay?
Go.
So, and this is like, it's amazing to me that, you know, in the recent cull of how racist pop culture has been,
right,
even in recent times, this period of like the late 90s to the early 2000s is where most of the examples of that are from. The Jimmy Fallon blackface, the Jimmy Kimmel blackface, all the Jimmys and the blackfaces. And I kind of, you know, like, I see it as part of the same thing where we've kind of come so comfortable with this idea of postmodern irony that when you apply it to things like race, you get so comfortable it goes full circle and you end up just being racist again.
Yeah, right.
And so this movie is trying to kind of comment on how the trope of black people in horror movies get killed first. But in doing that, it does it in such a kind of lax way that disproportionately more black people die in this movie than white people.
Yes.
And not only that, we have a
Completely and totally.
mystical aged black man, which is not doing the mixed up racial politics any good.
There's a bagger Vance present in this movie.
Who not like 4 years ago played the same character in the Hudsucker Proxy, but with greater humor and self-reflection.
Of course,
of what he was doing.
But you also,
it made me think of a movie like,
because you have Jack Black culturally appropriating in this movie as well.
Oh my God!
Although I'll say this, I have a note that says the best acting in this movie is when he dies.
I think when he came on screen, I was like, finally, someone who's able to carefully judge the tone of this movie.
Yeah, totally. Yes, absolutely. Carefully.
He's basically in his own Funny or Die sketch that is that has been digitally inserted into this movie. And they're so brazen about black people being killed first that there's a guy who wants to be black in the same shot who gets away scot-free.
Right.
He's like walking around smoking. The killer don't go nowhere near him. And that's what I mean about like they are obviously pointing to the fact that like, oh, if there's a black person and a white person in the shot, the black person's going to get killed first because it's a horror movie.
Right.
But in doing that, it's like pretty much 90% of the black characters in this movie die.
Mm-hmm.
Only I mean, you wouldn't be able to kill
everyone except Brandy,
and I
right?
think that's clear. You can't kill off Moesha. And there's another scene which made me think of, well, the whole time I thought of Moesha, but the scene that really made me thought of it is when she's jumping up and down on the bed in the hotel, and I'm like,
I have a note about that. What are these people doing?
If this wasn't Moesha, this would be a nude scene. This would be a nude sex scene. That someone is coming and going, Moesha cannot be naked. She is going to lose her fucking audience if you have her screwing on screen naked. So,
right.
Anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, I think this movie is uncomfortably fits into that past trend.
Oh, it's
just like and you excuse the pun, but it's like a black hole in our political consciousness where we got so used to the idea of referring to racism that we just became racist again.
Yeah.
And that's, and Jack Black is the sort of symbol of that. He's not necessarily the cure to it, though.
No.
Also, speaking of movies that we've done before, which we weren't, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go on.
Did you get Deja Vu watching this movie?
No.
Did you think about Jaws the Revenge as much as I did when I watched this movie?
No.
We're in the Bahamas.
That's true.
Jack Black has dreadlocks.
Except when you're watching Jaws the Revenge, you feel like you're in the Bahamas.
Well, that's probably because they filmed it there, not Mexico.
Right. But here you feel like you're either A, in Mexico, or B, on a set.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, well, it's a resort.
Yeah, but it's like...
Yeah.
It makes you think of The Office. You keep thinking sandals, all inclusive.
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't get this out of my head. When they went to the Bahamas, then Jack Black turned up with his dreadlocks, and then...
So you're saying
he emerges shark-like out of the water at one point.
That's true.
Doing a Jaws
imitation.
There's voodoo in this movie, which, as we covered, voodoo was like left on the cutting room floor, but that was the driving force behind the. And I was just like, this movie is obsessed with Jaws, but not the Jaws. Jaws the Revenge. This is a sequel that's obsessed with other sequels.
That's fucking great.
And just to nod ahead to the next movie. This is not the last time they will steal something from a Jaws sequel in this franchise.
Stay tuned then. All right. Well, okay. Let's take another break, and then we're gonna come back, and I want to talk to you about, and we've talked about this before with the Psycho series, how easily the murderer seems to be able to clean up his messes. So,
If you had your way, this would be a cleaning podcast.
I swear to God, Tom, it really bothers me. We're talking about it when we come back. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we are back once again here talking about I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Tom, when we last left, you given me a little shit about my obsession with cleaning, but I'm telling you, if you watch the original and watch this movie, you're constantly saying to yourself, how the fuck is this guy doing this? In the original movie, there's a corpse in her trunk with 200 crabs in broad daylight. She leaves the car, brings her friends back, opens the trunk, everything's clean. So you tell me how a man in a slicker suit and a hook cleans that car in broad daylight without people seeing it. In this movie, she finds, I think it's the guy from the docks who pretends to be a native but is not. Again, more racial problems. But he's hanging in her closet up high, like up, high in a closet, blood all over the floor. She comes back, wiped clean, body not there. It just drives me fucking nuts how easy it is for this guy to move bodies. He's fucking magical, mystical himself, this murderer. Well, he's showing up in multiple locations 5 seconds after he was in another location.
Yeah, I mean...
without the filmmaker telling you time has passed.
As I understand it, at this point in the franchise, he is not supernatural yet.
That's right. We got more to talk about, everyone.
So you're right. You're right. He should not have these skills yet. You're 100% right in that respect. But yeah, that would be my only explanation. Well, where does the voodoo play into this? Because we see. Is it just a red herring to make you think that...
I think it's a complete red herring. I was just going to say, it doesn't...
To make you think Bill Cubs is the murderer?
Just to make you think that the magical black man...
That would make sense that you could voodoo, you could just move a doll around and that would clean everything up.
Right,
you clean up the doll and then the corpse is gone. I don't know. I don't know how voodoo works. I'm assuming it's something like that.
Clearly. Brush up on your voodoo, for fuck's sake.
But I feel like there are several explanations, but when you see Ben Willis and he's like flesh and blood, you're like, well, all that goes out the window. This guy shouldn't be able to do any of this.
Right. And can we talk about how many opportunities the murderer has to murder Jennifer Love Hewitt? He locks her in a tanning booth. She's in her room brushing her teeth or something, and he walks right past her.
Yeah.
All of this is just to give us scares, but hey, murderer, you're in the room with the person you want to kill.
It's all about timing with him. He's really, he's like Grandpa Seth from Troll 2. It's timekeeping is very important. He's like, it's not the right time to murder yet.
It's not.
I'm on a schedule.
What what seems important to him is before he murders, he wants Jennifer Love Hewitt to question her sanity. And in both this movie and the original, you have these fantastically stupid scenes where she, arms wide out, exasperated, just talks to the sky and says, "Come on and get me. You want to come? Come on. Come and get me. I'm ready for you."
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like that's the moment where he goes, "Aha. Now I'm ready to kill."
Hey, look, I think we've only seen a fraction of the mythology underpinning the fisherman, as he is not known in this movie, but soon comes to be known.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that he's like Dracula. You have to invite him to murder you before he. Maybe he's like a catch and release fisherman.
He might be. That's true.
Like he catches you and then lets you go, and then only.
Well,
kills you when
it's
he
more.
needs to eat.
Yeah, exactly. It's more. He'll murder one fish for every 5 he lets go.
Yeah. Well, he's pretty discriminating. So it's.
But how funny is it? Like, there are moments in this movie where, I mean, you can see what's coming from a mile away, script-wise. Like,
Well, that
I remember
that
when
tanning booth sequence that you mentioned, that scene writes itself. As soon as Brandy is like, "I'm gonna
Right.
leave you for a while,"
Right, there's a murderer on the loose. I'm gonna leave you here and go work out.
you know both that you're getting like gratuitous naked bikini shots,
Mhm.
and that she's gonna get trapped in that tanning bed
Correct.
before it even happens.
But I even, it's funny because, say, like, okay, they discover bodies. Everyone now believes her. They go to the kitchen, not to try to protect themselves, but because Brandy's boyfriend needs a sandwich. He's hungry. Anyway,
It's a nice touch.
they're in the kitchen.
And he's enough of a douche to do that kind of thing.
to do that thing. That's true. But they're in the kitchen, and I wrote a note that said, "It's been too long since we saw Jennifer Esposito. I'm 100% sure she's behind that door."
Yeah.
And of course, that's exactly what happens.
Well, I mean, and we have so many of those, like, those moments that play out exactly as you imagine them to play out, that when we get to the final scare of the movie, she's taken by the killer from inside her bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I'm thinking back to Troll 2. It's like, this isn't a final scare. This is just more bad shit.
Right, and that's the thing.
There's
It's
never
like,
been a let up in this bad shit for it to be a
no,
final
yeah.
scare.
The bad shit, just trying to get to the end, lasts like 25 minutes. I mean, it goes on forever. They're in the house, they're out of the house, then they're in a greenhouse, then they go to Voodoo Land, then they come back,
Yeah.
then they go to the kitchen. I mean, it just goes on and on and on before you have the big reveal at the end.
And I did think that, Ben, when he falls into the mud grave, he sinks pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, he's sinking pretty fast, okay? But I was like, but still, you know how these guys work. Throw a few leaves on there. Just let's help nature take its course a little bit.
Let's fucking pour
Because
some
if you leave
cement.
him and his face is still exposed, he's gonna come back and kill you in your bedroom.
Learn from past mistakes.
Yeah, so there was, I mean, the biggest surprise is that three men and women survive in the movie.
Right.
So it's like, but that seems arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
What did you think of the reveal?
What's about Ben's son?
Yeah.
Pretty sure exactly the same thing happens in Screams 2 to 4.
I think it's 3.
Is it 3? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's fine. It's like, it's just short of that sweet spot that Scream has, where it's like,
Yeah.
What we need is Jamie Kennedy to come on a camcorder recording and say, here are the rules of this movie.
Yeah, explain some shit to us.
And the best we get here is, like, at one point they say that, Ben Willis is like Freddy or Jason or somebody. And it's like, if you're going to try and make the comparison, work a little bit harder.
If you could, please.
Yeah. But, I mean, it didn't... It's, what really, really struck me about when Ben Willis turns up? I don't know if this is the case in the first movie. It's certainly the case in the third movie. We have a lot of actors whose voice and body are separated.
Uh-huh.
He speaks in pure ADR. And did they cast an actor who looked perfect, but, spoke like a mouse? And then someone who was the size of a mouse, but had the voice of a killer? I don't know how the casting works,
No, yeah. I don't know how anything in this movie works. For, the whole plot line to me of Freddie Prinze Jr.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we said before, the movie goes to great lengths to show you how he got to the Bahamas in the middle of a storm that we're told no one can leave or go to the island. That's the whole point. And they're obviously so fragile. The screenwriters are so fragile about people poking holes in that theory.
Yeah.
That we have to have an entire second movie, which is Freddie Prinze takes the bus to Miami, kidnaps a boat, and goes to the Bahamas.
Well, and the one thing I loved so much, because, okay, first of all, Slicker Man tries to run over Freddie Prinze Jr. Freddie Prinze Jr. just runs over a highway barrier.
Mm-hmm.
You could get out of the car and stab him, but no, they just cut the scene, and the next thing you do is you see him in the hospital. He's in the hospital, and the next thing you hear is boop. All the nurses freak out. They go in the room. No, he's left. He's taken all his stuff off, put on clothes, and jumped out a window. Then he gets on a bus. Then he, like you said, kidnaps a boat. I mean, the amount of shit this guy's going through to try and go and save his girlfriend is a lot. And then he's going to the Bahamas in the middle of a storm, and the first thing he does is get on the CB, and he says, "Hello, Mayday, Mayday, got a problem here on the boat.
Yeah, no,
big storm." So,
well, yeah, and I mean, it's sort of saying, like, having gone to the lengths of trying to set up the fact that they are completely isolated, you have to work back from that. So I guess, I don't know, I guess they're sort of saying, like, if you plan ahead, you can go anywhere. I don't know why.
Yeah,
it's
right.
I mean, I think I would have preferred him just turning up and it being entirely implausible. I mean, drop him in by helicopter. I don't care, really. He's just, at that point, he's just a cog in the machine of horror.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happens, is someone who you think is, if not dead, then too far away to do anything about it.
How about, right,
comes back and saves the day, and that's the kind of trope of that. But this movie has a real bug up,
but it just seems
bug up its
so
butt about, well, how would he get how would he get to Miami? Well, he'd take a bus. Would that be a nice journey? No, he'd have to take pills to kill the pain. An old woman would stare at him. I was like, well, yeah, of course. I tell you what, it really reminded me of. We'll probably get there at some point, but Toy Story 4, when the Key and Peele characters start telling a story of how they're going to steal the keys from a woman, and they tell everything in the story that is irrelevant, right. Like her driving home, her having a glass of wine, going to the back.
Yeah.
And then the characters interrupt them. It's like, where's the story going? That is exactly how I felt about all these sequences.
Well, how about the sequence? The sequence that made me laugh out loud is when They're kind of walking around. They're walking gingerly. They're trying not to make a lot of noise. And Jennifer Love Hewitt turns around to Brandy and says, "Hey, hold my hand." And she says, "I am holding your hand."
Oh, yeah.
And they're like a good 10 feet apart from each other. Like, it's such a ridiculous bit of nonsense.
I mean, 90% of the time when this movie does stuff that's on the nose, it just feels very superficial. There's one or two moments that I think kind of work in a John Landis horror sort of way. Like, it's very, like you're being really obvious, but in quite a fun way. And the fun is that everyone understands what's happening.
Right.
And I thought the karaoke sequence was one of those. When she starts singing "I Will Survive," I thought, yeah, that could have been in like a John Landis movie.
Sure.
That's not too different. But there are precious few of those moments.
No, yeah, they're few and far between.
Yeah. So
I'll tell you what I was totally on board for, though.
Oh, go ahead.
Is...
That's not Bill Cobbs? Tell me.
Well, Ben Willis, right?
Yeah,
Ben,
the fisherman.
The fisherman. Ben Willis killing his own son.
Ah, yeah.
I was totally on board for that. I thought that was a great moment.
Yeah, I guess that's not what you expect to happen. But
Everything about it, I thought it was shot well.
Yeah.
You realize the horror that has transferred onto Ben because complete opposite of his intention, wants to kill Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved that.
Yep. I can
But then, of course, that's followed up by Jennifer Love Hewitt shooting him with a revolver that has 6 bullets with no fewer than like 9 shots. So many bullets in that gun.
This movie cannot leave a good thing alone.
Yeah, right.
It has to unravel it to the point where it is, ends up being, odds even every single time.
Well,
It's,
and
it's
so
easy come, easy go for everything good in this movie.
yeah, exactly right. And the thing about it is how this movie ends speaks directly to that, where they've saved the day, they think Ben's dead, and Brandy and Jennifer Love Hewitt are making jokes about, I forget even what, the weather or something like that. And I just keep thinking, hey, Brandy, your boyfriend's dead.
Yeah.
Take a moment, would you? Like tip your cap, have a moment of silence, maybe.
Yeah.
But basically, it's one of those movies where, hey, everything that happened before this, it's okay now because we're safe, and the murderer's gone. So
No
we
one
can go
was
on
ever
with our
killed in the
lives.
sun.
Right? Yeah, ever.
Yeah. The only other thing of note that, again, for our purposes of this being a sequel that I, drew out of this movie was very early on in the movie, Jennifer Love Hewitt seen looking at photos of the actors who aren't in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered how much time in sequels is spent people looking at photos of people who aren't in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were to do a supercut of that.
Of people who are in the last movie.
Yeah, like if you would do like a would it end up like Christian Marclay's the Clock? Would it last 24 hours? Just people looking at photos of people in sequels who aren't in that movie.
That's great.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I can
What'd you think
already
of,
think of like 2 hours worth of that in sequels right now.
Right. So when you saw the very last shots of this movie, what'd you think? Did you, because in my mind, if they were going to make another sequel, well, then that's obviously just another dream sequence. She's just having bad dreams again.
Yeah, they'd have to,
Right?
well, I mean, they did make a sequel to this. And they didn't work.
But they didn't.
So I
They
guess
did
that means
they did in name only.
Yeah, that new piece of information you told me about them walking back. I mean, that at the very least, I'll always know what you did last summer. Does not try to undo the final moment. It doesn't retcon that final moment.
Nope. Yeah.
And that's pretty big of a sequel thing to do. So
well, they gave themselves no choice by where they decided to place that story and the story they tried to tell. But
basically,
we'll talk about that in the next episode.
How would they? Because there's there's different variations of this in other horror movies that are like the template of how to do it. Again, this movie has no excuse. You think of Friday the 13th, Part 2. It begins looking as if it's going to be about the final girl, and she's like killed pretty much immediately.
Right.
And so there's different ways of kind of handling, expectation about where it's going to go. I guess you don't see her being killed. But it's a good question, and maybe one of our picture sequels could address.
Oh yeah.
What really happened?
Well, stay tuned for that, everybody. We've got I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer coming up next, followed by our Pitch a Sequel segment. Tom, any last words for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer?
I used to be a lifeguard, and I'm about to blow my whistle. More words of wisdom from Brandy Nee Moesha.
All right. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I'm Mike Shantz from the How Dare You Awards. That's it for I can't even say the title.
You said I, and then you sighed.
I just went, damn it.
That should be on the
for fuck's sake. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Piece of shit. Goodbye.